Max's ears shot forward like radar dishes, his entire body going rigid as they descended the concrete steps into 5 Point Station. The familiar hum of Atlanta's Marta system echoed through the tunnels, but something else caught his attention, something that made every instinct scream danger. "Easy, boy," Sarah murmured, her hand instinctively moving to her radio. 6 years of partnership had taught her to trust Max's reactions without question. When her Belgian Malinois froze like a statue, trouble wasn't far behind. The evening commuter rush was winding down, leaving the platform scattered with only a handful of passengers waiting for the last trains. Fluorescent lights flickered overhead, casting harsh shadows across the tiled walls. Sarah's boots echoed against the concrete as she followed Max's intense gaze toward the maintenance tunnel entrance. Max's nostrils flared, processing scents invisible to human detection. His training kicked in automatically. Explosives, chemicals, danger. The acrid smell of something that didn't belong in Atlanta's underground transport system filled his sensitive nose with alarming intensity. "What is it, Max?" Sarah whispered, crouching beside her partner. His black and tan coat was tense under her touch, muscles coiled like springs ready to release. "Show me what you found." Without hesitation, Max padded toward the restricted maintenance area, his nose working overtime. Sarah's pulse quickened as she noticed the service door standing slightly ajar, a clear violation of standard Marta security protocols. The yellow warning tape hung loose, as if someone had cut through it recently with deliberate precision. She keyed her radio with practiced efficiency. "Dispatch, this is Unit K97, requesting immediate backup at 5 Point Station, lower level. Possible security breach in maintenance sector. Copy, K97, units en route, ETA 12 minutes. 12 minutes felt like an eternity when Max was displaying this level of agitation. Sarah drew her tactical flashlight, the powerful beam cutting through the oppressive dimness beyond the service entrance. The narrow corridor stretched ahead, lined with an intricate network of pipes and electrical conduits that serviced the bustling station above. Max pressed forward with calculated precision, his paws silent on the cold concrete. Years of intensive training had honed his detection abilities to near perfection, and right now every fiber of his being was laser-focused on the dangerous chemical signatures drifting through the stale underground air. "Good boy," Sarah breathed, following close behind him. "Take it slow and steady." The maintenance tunnel gradually opened into a wider chamber, where the real infrastructure of Atlanta's Marta system lived and breathed. Massive concrete support pillars held up the enormous weight of the station above, their surfaces scarred by decades of urban wear and countless repairs. But something was fundamentally wrong with the nearest pillar. Max sat abruptly in his classic alert position, his signal for a positive detection. Sarah's blood turned to ice as her flashlight beam revealed fresh gouges carved into the concrete and something far more sinister. Small, cylindrical objects attached to the structural supports with military precision and professional expertise. "Jesus Christ," she whispered, recognizing the sophisticated setup immediately. These were professional-grade explosives, positioned exactly where they would cause maximum structural damage and potential catastrophic collapse. Her radio crackled to life with urgent static. "K97, backup is still 8 minutes out. What's your current status?" Sarah's extensive training took over completely, suppressing the dangerous surge of adrenaline coursing through her veins. "Dispatch, we have confirmed explosive devices. I need the bomb squad and structural engineers here immediately. Clear the entire station now." Max remained perfectly motionless beside the compromised pillar, his detection work complete, but his alertness unwavering. His sensitive ears swiveled toward the deeper recesses of the maintenance area, clearly indicating this wasn't an isolated incident, but part of something much larger. Sarah's trembling hand found Max's steady head, drawing vital comfort from his unwavering presence. "We've got serious work ahead of us, partner." The terrifying implications hit her like a speeding freight train. Someone with intimate, detailed knowledge of Marta's complex infrastructure had planned this meticulously. The precise positioning of these devices wasn't random vandalism. This was calculated sabotage, specifically designed to bring down the entire station and potentially kill hundreds of innocent people. As piercing evacuation alarms began to wail overhead, echoing through every tunnel and platform, Sarah realized they'd stumbled onto something far more dangerous than their routine evening patrol. Max's razor-sharp instincts had potentially saved hundreds of lives tonight, but the urgent question remained: exactly how many more deadly devices were hidden throughout Atlanta's vast underground maze? The real hunt was just beginning. The bomb squad's robotic unit whirred to life, its mechanical arms carefully examining the explosive device Max had discovered. Sarah watched from the safe perimeter, her partner pressed against her leg, still alert, but no longer showing the intense agitation from earlier. "Professional grade C4, Sergeant Martinez announced, his voice crackling through the radio. "Timer mechanism, pressure sensors, the whole 9 yards. Whoever planted this knew exactly what they were doing." Sarah's jaw tightened. This wasn't some amateur operation or terrorist wannabe. "Any identification markers on the components?" "That's the interesting part," Martinez replied, directing his robot to photograph every angle. "Some of these parts have serial numbers that trace back to a construction demolition company, Rivera Engineering Solutions." Max's ears perked up at the mention of the company name, though Sarah knew he was simply responding to the tension in her voice. She pulled out her phone, already running the name through Atlanta PD's database. "Rivera Engineering," she muttered, scrolling through the search results. "Looks like they had the city contract for Marta infrastructure maintenance until 2 years ago." The pieces were starting to form a disturbing picture. Someone with legitimate access to both the tunnels and professional-grade explosives had gone rogue. "Collins?" Lieutenant Hayes's voice cut through her thoughts as he approached the perimeter. "We've got a bigger problem. Your partner's nose led us to check the other support pillars. We found 3 more devices." Sarah's heart sank. 4 explosives strategically placed throughout the station's foundation. Timeline on the timers? That's what's got us worried. They're not set for immediate detonation. Looks like they're designed to go off sequentially, starting with the eastern support wall and cascading through the entire structure. Max shifted beside her, his nose twitching toward a maintenance cart someone had abandoned near the far wall. Sarah noticed his subtle change in posture, not the full alert position, but definitely interested in something. "What is it, boy?" she whispered, following his gaze. The cart looked innocuous enough, filled with standard maintenance tools and work orders, but Max's training had taught him to identify the lingering scent signatures of explosives, even after they'd been moved or handled. Sarah approached carefully, pulling on latex gloves before examining the cart's contents. Buried beneath a stack of work orders, she found what Max had detected: a tablet computer, its screen cracked, but still functional. "Lieutenant, you need to see this," she called, powering up the device. The tablet's desktop was filled with detailed engineering schematics of the Marta 5-point station. Not the public blueprints available to contractors, but the classified structural analysis showing load-bearing calculations, stress points, and emergency support systems. "Son of a bitch," Hayes breathed, looking over her shoulder. "These aren't just bombing plans. This is a complete structural failure analysis." Sarah scrolled through the files, each one more damning than the last. The bomber hadn't just wanted to damage the station, they'd calculated exactly how to bring down the entire complex with surgical precision. "Look at this," she said, opening a folder labeled Phase Implementation. The screen displayed a timeline showing the sequential detonation pattern, designed to create a domino effect that would pancake the upper levels onto the platform below. Max pressed closer to Sarah's side, sensing her growing alarm. His warm presence grounded her as the full scope of the plot became clear. "We're not dealing with terrorism," Sarah realized aloud. "This is personal revenge. Someone who knows this system better than anyone else alive." Hayes was already on his radio, coordinating with the FBI task force. We need to cross-reference every former Rivera engineering employee with access to these schematics. And get me everything on Marcus Rivera himself. The lieutenant's radio crackled with an urgent update. Sir, we've got the company records. Marcus Rivera was terminated from his position as lead structural engineer after a safety violation resulted in a lawsuit. The city of Atlanta was named as co-defendant. Sarah felt the pieces clicking into place like bullets loading into a chamber. A disgraced engineer with intimate knowledge of Marta's vulnerabilities, access to professional explosives, and a personal vendetta against the city that destroyed his career. He's not done, she said quietly, scratching behind Max's ears. 4 devices in one station is just the beginning. As if summoned by her words, Hayes's radio erupted with multiple emergency calls from across the city, reports of suspicious activity at 3 other major Marta stations, all featuring the same MO. Security breaches in maintenance areas and the distinct chemical signatures that Max and other canine units were trained to detect. Sarah looked down at her partner, whose intelligent brown eyes seemed to understand the magnitude of what they'd uncovered. Ready for a long night, boy? Max's tail wagged once, a brief acknowledgement before he returned to his professional focus. Together, they'd stumbled onto a city-wide plot of unprecedented scope, and the clock was already ticking toward Marcus Rivera's calculated revenge. The hunt had become a race. Sarah's phone buzzed with an urgent message as she and Max raced through the North Avenue station's upper concourse. The bomb squad had successfully neutralized 2 more devices, but Marcus Rivera was staying 1 step ahead of their response teams. Collins, we've got his employment file. Lieutenant Hayes's voice crackled through her earpiece. Marcus Rivera, 42 years old, 15-year veteran of structural engineering, fired from Rivera Engineering Solutions after a bridge inspection he signed off on resulted in a collapse that injured 6 workers. Max's paws clicked against the polished floor as they descended toward the platform level. His nose was already working, scanning for the chemical signatures that had become terrifyingly familiar over the past 3 hours. What's his connection to Marta specifically? Sarah asked, following Max toward the maintenance access points. That's where it gets personal, Hayes replied. The city of Atlanta terminated their contract with Rivera's company after the bridge incident. Cost him everything, his business, his reputation, his marriage. According to the divorce papers, he blamed the city for destroying his life. Sarah felt a chill that had nothing to do with the underground air conditioning. Personal vendettas were the most dangerous kind of motivation, driving people to extremes that pure ideology never could. Max suddenly stopped near a utility closet, his body language shifting into high alert. Sarah's heart rate spiked as she recognized the signs. Another positive detection. Found something, boy, she whispered, drawing her weapon as a precaution. The closet door was secured with a standard city lock, but Sarah noticed fresh scratches around the mechanism. Someone with the right tools and knowledge had been here recently. She called for backup and waited the mandatory 3 minutes before approaching. Max remained perfectly still, his training keeping him focused despite the adrenaline coursing through both their systems. The lock clicked open under her master key, revealing a space that should have contained nothing but cleaning supplies and basic maintenance equipment. Instead, Sarah found herself staring at a makeshift command center. Multiple laptops displayed real-time feeds from Marta security cameras throughout the system. Detailed maps covered every available surface, marked with red X's indicating target locations and blue lines showing optimal escape routes. But what made Sarah's blood run cold was the large digital timer mounted on the wall, counting down from just over 4 hours. "Hayes, we've got a problem," she said into her radio. "Rivera's been operating from inside the system. He's got surveillance on all our movements and a master timeline for the whole operation." Max moved deeper into the closet, his nose leading him to a stack of engineering textbooks and professional journals. But these weren't random reference materials. They were Sarah's own case files, photocopied and annotated with disturbing precision. Her hands trembled slightly as she recognized reports from a bombing case she'd worked 2 years earlier. A domestic terrorist had tried to destroy a government building using similar tactics, and Sarah's testimony had been crucial in securing his conviction. "He's been studying me," she realized aloud. "Learning my methods, my patterns, everything about how I work." The personal violation hit her harder than any physical threat. Marcus Rivera hadn't just planned to destroy Atlanta's infrastructure. He'd specifically researched how to stay ahead of Sarah and Max's investigative abilities. Hayes's voice cut through her shock. "Collins, we're getting reports of suspicious activity at Lindbergh Center and Midtown stations. Rivera's accelerating his timeline." Sarah looked down at Max, whose steady presence had carried her through countless dangerous situations. This time felt different, more personal, and infinitely more threatening. "What do you think, partner?" she asked softly. "Can we outsmart an engineer who's been planning this for 2 years? Max's response was to walk directly to a wall map and sit in front of it, his signal for a positive detection. Sarah examined the area where he'd alerted and found something Rivera had missed in his meticulous planning, a small notation in his own handwriting. "Structural weakness, Peachtree Center, North Pillar Assembly," she read aloud. "Primary target, maximum casualties." The realization hit her like a physical blow. Rivera wasn't just planning random destruction. He was targeting the busiest station in Atlanta's system during tomorrow morning's rush hour. Thousands of commuters would be directly in the blast zone. Sarah's radio erupted with multiple emergency calls. Rivera had triggered diversionary explosions at 2 minor stations, drawing resources away from his real targets. The man was executing a plan that accounted for every possible response. "He's been 3 moves ahead since the beginning," Sarah muttered, gathering the evidence while Max remained on high alert. As they prepared to leave the command post, Sarah caught sight of one final detail that made her stomach lurch. Taped to the wall beside Rivera's master timeline was a newspaper clipping from her commendation ceremony after the government building case. Marcus Rivera hadn't just studied her methods. He'd made this personal. The hunt had become a direct challenge, engineer versus investigator, with the lives of innocent Atlanta citizens hanging in the balance. Max pressed against her leg, offering silent support, as Sarah realized they were no longer chasing a saboteur. They were being hunted by someone who knew exactly how they worked, and who had spent 2 years planning their failure. The game had changed completely. The abandoned control room beneath Peachtree Center Station reeked of industrial lubricant and something far more sinister, the metallic scent of freshly installed detonation equipment. Max's hackles rose as they descended the rusted maintenance ladder, his acute senses processing threat levels that human perception couldn't begin to comprehend. 3 hours and 17 minutes, Sarah whispered, checking her watch against the countdown she'd memorized from Rivera's command post. Morning rush hour started in exactly that time frame, when 15,000 commuters would flood through the station above their heads. Max moved with surgical precision through the maze of support beams and utility pipes, his nose tracking chemical signatures that grew stronger with each step. Sarah followed close behind, her tactical flashlight revealing the true scope of Rivera's engineering expertise. The man had transformed the forgotten maintenance level into a demolition masterpiece. Shaped charges lined the primary support columns with mathematical precision, their placement calculated to create a cascade failure that would pancake the entire station complex. "Jesus, Rivera," Sarah breathed, examining the sophisticated timer mechanisms. "You really did plan this for 2 years." Each device was connected to a central detonation controller, its digital display showing not just the countdown, but real-time structural analysis data. Rivera had programmed the system to adjust timing based on seismic sensors, monitoring the weight load above, ensuring maximum catastrophic effect when the station reached peak capacity. Max suddenly froze beside a massive concrete pillar, his body language screaming immediate danger. Sarah's training kicked in as she noticed the tripwire stretched across their path, nearly invisible in the dim lighting. Good catch, boy, she whispered, carefully stepping over the booby trap. Rivera had anticipated pursuit and prepared accordingly. Her radio crackled with Lieutenant Hayes's urgent voice. "Collins, we've got a problem. Rivera triggered the diversionary explosions specifically to draw our bomb squad away from your location. You're on your own for at least 40 minutes. 40 minutes. Sarah looked at her watch again. 3 hours and 11 minutes until detonation, and no technical support to disarm a system that had taken a professional engineer 2 years to perfect. Max pressed forward, leading her deeper into Rivera's underground fortress. The maintenance tunnels branched in multiple directions, each pathway rigged with motion sensors and additional tripwires. But Max's training allowed him to detect the invisible threats, navigating through the maze with confidence that kept Sarah alive. They emerged into a larger chamber where Rivera had established his final command center. Multiple monitors displayed live feeds from every Marta station, tracking police movements and emergency response deployment. A sophisticated computer system managed the detonation sequence, its screens showing structural modeling that would have impressed a university engineering department. But what made Sarah's blood run cold was the personal shrine Rivera had constructed in the corner. Newspaper clippings from the bridge collapse, photos of the 6 workers who'd been injured, and copies of the lawsuit documents that had destroyed his career. At the center, a framed photograph of Rivera with his ex-wife and daughter, both faces crossed out with red marker. This isn't just about revenge against the city, Sarah realized aloud. He's trying to prove his engineering was never the problem. Max moved to a workbench covered with technical manuals and handwritten calculations. His nose twitched with interest, detecting something important among the scattered papers. Sarah examined Max's find. Detailed notes showing Rivera's original bridge inspection had been correct. The collapse had resulted from substandard materials approved by city contractors, not engineering failure. Rivera had been made a scapegoat to protect political connections and construction company profits. The tragic irony hit her like a physical blow. Rivera's desire to prove his innocence was driving him to commit the very crime his enemies had falsely accused him of. Her phone buzzed with a text message from an unknown number. "Officer Collins, you're reading my vindication. The city destroyed an innocent man. Now they'll learn the consequences of corruption." Sarah's hands trembled as she typed back, "Rivera, you were right about the bridge, but killing thousands of innocent people won't bring back your reputation." The response came immediately. "Innocent? They voted for the politicians. They pay the taxes that fund the corruption. They're all complicit." Max whined softly, sensing Sarah's emotional turmoil. She scratched behind his ears, drawing strength from their partnership as the weight of the situation pressed down on her. 3 hours and 4 minutes, she whispered, watching the countdown timer tick relentlessly toward catastrophe. Rivera's final message appeared on her phone. "You have 2 choices, Officer Collins. Evacuate the station and let me prove the city's infrastructure is fatally flawed, or stay and become another casualty of their negligence. Either way, the truth comes out at rush hour." Sarah looked at the sophisticated detonation system, then down at Max, whose intelligent eyes seemed to understand the impossible choice they faced. Thousands of lives hung in the balance, and somewhere in the tunnels above them, Marcus Rivera was watching every move, waiting to see if she would choose duty over survival. The countdown continued its merciless progression towards 7:30 a.m., when Atlanta would learn the true cost of one man's broken dreams and 2 years of methodical planning. Time was running out. The sound of footsteps echoing through the maintenance tunnels sent Max into immediate alert mode. Sarah pressed against the concrete wall, her weapon drawn, as Marcus Rivera's voice drifted through the chamber's ventilation system. "I know you're down here, Officer Collins," his amplified voice announced through hidden speakers. "Did you enjoy reading about my vindication? 2 years of research, and you're the first person to see the truth." Sarah's radio was dead this deep underground, cutting her off from any backup support. The countdown timer showed 2 hours and 37 minutes, morning rush hour approaching with mathematical certainty. Max's ears swiveled, tracking Rivera's actual location beyond the electronic voice. His training allowed him to distinguish between recorded sounds and live human presence, and right now he was pointing toward the deepest section of the maintenance complex. "Come on, boy," Sarah whispered. "Let's end this." They moved through Rivera's maze of booby traps, Max's superior senses guiding them past motion sensors and pressure plates that would have triggered additional explosive devices. Rivera had turned the underground complex into a fortress, but he hadn't counted on a partner with 4 legs and detection abilities beyond human comprehension. The maintenance tunnels opened into the station's original foundation level, where massive concrete pylons supported the weight of 40 years of urban development above. Rivera had chosen this location with devastating precision. Bringing down these supports would create a catastrophic collapse extending far beyond the Marta station itself. "There!" Sarah breathed, spotting Rivera near the central detonation controller. Marcus Rivera looked exactly like his employment photos, but 2 years of obsessive planning had aged him dramatically. His hair was grey, his clothes wrinkled, and his eyes held the dangerous focus of someone who had sacrificed everything for a single purpose. "Officer Collins," Rivera said calmly, not turning from his equipment. "Right on schedule. I calculated you'd reach this point with approximately 2.5 hours remaining." "It's over, Rivera," Sarah called out, keeping her weapon trained on him. "The bomb squad has neutralized the other devices. This is the last one." Rivera laughed, a sound devoid of humor. "The other devices were diversions. This is the main event, a demonstration of what happens when a city builds its infrastructure on lies and corruption." Max remained perfectly still beside Sarah, but she could feel the tension in his muscles. He was waiting for the signal, ready to move with lethal precision if Rivera posed an immediate threat. "You were right about the bridge," Sarah said, trying to establish connection. "The investigation was flawed, but destroying Atlanta won't restore your reputation, won't it?" Rivera turned finally, revealing the dead expression of someone who had moved beyond caring about consequences. "When the structural analysis is complete, when the investigators examine the wreckage, they'll find evidence of the same corner-cutting and material substitutions that caused my bridge to fail. The city will be exposed." The detonation controller behind him displayed not just the countdown, but real-time seismic data from the supports around them. Rivera had programmed the system to create a documentary record of the collapse, turning mass murder into a final engineering report. "Thousands of innocent people will die," Sarah pressed. "Innocent?" Rivera's voice rose for the first time. "They elected the politicians who covered up the bridge investigation. They pay taxes to a system that destroyed my family. They're all complicit in the corruption." Max's body language shifted slightly, not an attack position, but preparation for movement. Sarah recognized the signal. Her partner had identified something important about Rivera's positioning or the equipment behind him. "Even if you're right about the corruption," Sarah said, taking a careful step forward, "your daughter wouldn't want this legacy. She wouldn't want to remember her father as a mass murderer." Rivera's composure cracked for just a moment. "My daughter hasn't spoken to me in 18 months. The divorce, the scandal, the bankruptcy. It destroyed everything." "Because you let it," Sarah realized. "You had a choice after the bridge incident. You could have fought the corruption through legal channels, exposed the truth through journalism, rebuilt your life and your relationship with your family. Instead, you chose revenge." "Legal channels?" Rivera's laugh was bitter. "I tried for 2 years. Lawyers, journalists, politicians, they all protected the same system that scapegoated me." Max suddenly moved, not toward Rivera, but toward a section of the foundation wall that Sarah hadn't noticed before. His nose was working overtime, detecting something that changed the entire dynamic of the confrontation. "What is it, boy?" Sarah asked, following Max's indication. Behind a maintenance panel, Max had detected additional explosive devices, not part of Rivera's main detonation system, but older charges that had been placed by someone else entirely. "You didn't plant these," Sarah said, examining the different timer mechanisms and chemical signatures. Rivera's face went white as he realized what Max had found. "Those aren't mine. Those are city contractors," Sarah finished, the pieces falling into place. "Someone really was cutting corners on this foundation, just like your bridge. You stumbled onto actual structural sabotage while planning your revenge." Bill, the countdown timer showed 2 hours and 11 minutes, but now Sarah understood they were facing two separate threats: Rivera's elaborate revenge plot and genuine structural sabotage that predated his involvement by months. "We have to work together," Sarah said urgently. "If both systems detonate, the collapse will be 10 times worse than either of us calculated." Rivera stared at the evidence of real corruption he'd accidentally uncovered, his 2-year plan suddenly becoming secondary to a threat he'd never anticipated. "Help me disarm your system," Sarah pressed. "Then we'll expose the real criminals together." The foundations trembled slightly overhead as morning commuters began arriving for the early shift, unaware that their lives hung in the balance between one man's revenge and a conspiracy that ran deeper than anyone had imagined. Rivera's hands moved with surgical precision across his detonation controller, disabling his own explosive system, while Sarah worked on the older devices Max had discovered. The countdown timer showed 1 hour and 43 minutes, but the real danger now came from the corrupted contractor's sabotage that had been slowly weakening the foundation for months. These charges were designed to simulate natural structural failure, Rivera explained, his engineering expertise finally serving a constructive purpose. Someone wanted to bring down this station without leaving evidence of deliberate sabotage. Max remained vigilant beside the foundation wall, his nose tracking chemical signatures from additional devices they hadn't yet located. His detection abilities were proving invaluable in identifying threats that sophisticated electronic equipment had missed. "How many more?" Sarah asked, following Max's lead to another concealed panel. "Based on the structural analysis, at least 6 more charges positioned at critical support points," Rivera replied, consulting the building schematics on his tablet. "But they're not connected to a central timer. Each one has its own degradation sequence." Sarah's radio crackled back to life as they moved closer to the surface levels. "Collins, this is Hayes. We've got bomb squad backup incoming, ETA 20 minutes. "Negative on waiting," Sarah responded. "We've discovered a secondary threat that's been active for months, sending coordinates now." Max led them through the foundation maze with unwavering accuracy, his training allowing him to distinguish between Rivera's sophisticated but harmless devices and the genuinely dangerous charges. Hidden throughout the structure, each discovery revealed more evidence of a conspiracy that extended far beyond one engineer's revenge plot. "Look at this," Rivera said, examining the 4th device they'd located. "These are military-grade thermite charges designed to burn through steel supports. This isn't about bringing down one station. Someone planned to destroy Atlanta's entire underground infrastructure." The scope of the real conspiracy dwarfed Rivera's 2-year revenge scheme. While he'd been planning to expose corruption through a single dramatic collapse, the actual criminals had been systematically undermining the foundation of the city's transportation network. "Why thermite?" Sarah asked, carefully photographing the device for evidence. "Because it burns hot enough to completely destroy evidence of sabotage," Rivera explained. "When investigators examined the wreckage, they'd find what appeared to be natural metal fatigue and structural failure. The perfect cover for insurance fraud on a massive scale." Max's alert posture suddenly intensified as footsteps echoed through the maintenance tunnels above them. But these weren't the heavy boots of police backup. They were the deliberate steps of someone trying to move quietly through the complex. "Company," Sarah whispered, drawing her weapon. 3 figures in construction uniforms appeared at the tunnel entrance, carrying equipment bags that clearly contained more than standard tools. The man in front wore a supervisor's hard hat and the kind of confident expression that came from years of unchallenged corruption. "Mr. Rivera," the supervisor called out. "Tom Morrison, Apex Construction. We're here to conduct the final safety inspection before the morning rush." Sarah recognized the name from city contract records. Apex Construction had been responsible for the foundation maintenance that Rivera's original bridge inspection had questioned. "The same company that used substandard materials on my bridge," Rivera said quietly, his voice carrying 2 years of suppressed rage. Morrison's friendly expression faltered as he noticed Rivera's detonation equipment and Sarah's police uniform. "I think there's been some kind of misunderstanding here." "No misunderstanding," Sarah replied, keeping her weapon trained on the 3 men. "We found your thermite charges, all of them." Udun, the construction workers exchanged glances that confirmed their guilt more clearly than any confession. Morrison's hand moved slowly toward his equipment bag, but Max's low growl warned him against any sudden movements. "Officer Collins," Morrison said carefully, "I think you've misunderstood the situation. We're here to prevent structural damage, not cause it. By placing military-grade explosives throughout the foundation." Sarah's voice carried the authority of someone who'd seen too much corruption to be fooled by smooth explanations. Rivera stepped forward, his engineering expertise now serving justice instead of revenge. "I've documented everything, Morrison. The thermite placement, the timer sequences, the insurance policies your company took out on this structure 6 months ago. You've been planning this fraud for years." Morrison's facade finally cracked completely. "You have no idea how much money is involved here, Rivera. The insurance payout alone is worth $50 million, and that's before the federal disaster relief funding." "And how many innocent people die for your $50 million?" Sarah demanded. "That was never supposed to happen." One of the other workers protested. "The charges were timed for early morning before the commuter rush." Max's positioning shifted as he detected something new, additional people moving through the upper tunnels. Sarah's radio confirmed her partner's warning as backup units finally reached the foundation level. "APD! Everyone on the ground now!" Lieutenant Hayes's voice echoed through the chamber as tactical officers secured the scene. Morrison and his crew surrendered without resistance, their conspiracy collapsing under the weight of evidence that Rivera's revenge plot had accidentally uncovered. The man who'd planned to destroy Atlanta's infrastructure had instead saved it from a far more insidious threat. As the bomb squad worked to disarm the remaining thermite charges, Sarah found herself standing beside Rivera in the growing crowd of investigators and federal agents. "What happens now?" Rivera asked quietly. "Now you face charges for your explosive devices and terrorist threats," Sarah replied honestly. "But you'll also be the primary witness in a federal fraud case that's going to bring down some very powerful people." Rivera nodded slowly, accepting responsibility for his actions, while finding a measure of redemption in the justice his confession would serve. Max pressed against Sarah's leg, his job complete, but his loyalty unwavering. Together, they'd turned one man's quest for revenge into a victory for justice, proving once again that determination and partnership could overcome even the most elaborate criminal conspiracies. The foundation of Atlanta was secure, and the real criminals would face the consequences Rivera had originally sought for himself.